So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. We are a three-person panel today. I am the Research Fellow for Naval Forces and Maritime Security at the Institute. You might wonder why a Naval Forces Research Fellow is dealing with Afghanistan, given the total lack of sea around the country. But it's purely because, as the naval staff will often tell you, 50% or more of the UK's armed forces deployed to Afghanistan are from the Royal Navy, and it's almost entirely because of their commitment through the Royal Marines. So we're very privileged today to have the Commander of 3 Commando Brigade in Brigadier Ed Davis and his Chief of Staff, Alex Jansen, who will be telling us about the recent operations under Herrick 14 of the Royal Marines. Afghanistan is, of course, still deeply unstable, but there are some promising signs of stabilization in various parts of the country. It's a good story and a bad story all at once, so I think it will be a fascinating insight into how the country is developing and how the UK is committed to the country itself. And with that, I will hand over to Brigadier Davis.
Christian, thanks very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Brigadier Ed Davis, Commander 3 Commando Brigade. Right, and from is that close enough? From April to October this year, I commanded Task Force Helmand. Alex Jansen is my Chief of Staff, and he shared the journey with me. The tour that we did was the fourth tour that 3 Commando Brigade had been out in Afghanistan. The first was right back in 2002. And I suppose the first key point to make is that anything I talk about has been built upon the achievements and sacrifice of our predecessors and will be taken forward by successors. So it's a journey that goes back some way, and it's a journey with still some distance to travel. What I'm going to try and do over the next 30 to 40 minutes or so is just set out the spirit and the substance of our tour, talk about how we applied what we were taught, talk about where we got to, and maybe more importantly, just try and signpost where I think the campaign is going out in Afghanistan for you. But the bottom line up front is that the campaign is on track from my humble standpoint, in so much as that by the end of 2014, everything I've seen in the last 6 months, I believe that Central Helmand could be handed over and will be handed over to the Afghans, and particularly to an Afghan national security force, which is effective, trusted, and sustainable in terms of looking after the security. So I think it's very much a good story heading in a good direction, as opposed to a bad story heading in a bad direction. And I understand that a lot of people got counter views to that. And one of the main reasons I'm here today is to actually try and balance the story, try and balance the UK narrative about what Afghanistan was, is, and is going to be. Just a bit on our conceptual approach to counterinsurgency. And again, when I say our, it's very much UK Armed Forces Limited as opposed to 3 Commando Brigade. But this is a product of the best part of 6 years' experience out in Afghanistan. From us, it's all about enabling the government of Afghanistan to deliver a better offer, a better life to their people. And we're out there to try and help them do that. And in doing that, keeping our own country safe because of the security situation that we hopefully will get to in Afghanistan. The words around the outside are very much the principles of how we apply that conceptual model. Primus inter pares of those 4 principles is people first, insurgents second. And that's all about treating the cause of the problem, a disenfranchised and vulnerable people, as opposed to dealing with the symptoms of the problem, which is the insurgent. It's all about understanding any operation amongst the people. It's very difficult to understand what's happening at first pass, so you have to base all your judgment on considered judgment as opposed to superficial observation, and that's even the case with some of the very clever surveillance capabilities we've got out in theatre. It's also all about beating the Taliban, the insurgent, to delivering across all 3 lines of operations, both security, governance, and development. Precise, front-footed delivery ahead of the insurgency is what we were trying to do. Obviously, we were focused in the security domain, which was all about applying lethal force and the certainty of who we were doing it to, why we were doing it, and what the outcome would be. But clearly we assisted primarily the Helmand Provincial Reconstruction Team in helping Gyroa and the line ministries develop both governance and development. Power of combinations, the fourth principle, that's all about harnessing the insight of our Afghan partners so that we can direct our very clever capabilities and capacities in an intelligent way, which makes a difference. And working with the Afghans, you very quickly get to learn that the whole can be far greater than some of our individual parts. In terms of actually putting the conceptual model together, the 4 steps. One is understanding the context, and that's all about working out what offer is attractive to the Afghan people. What are their grievances, what are their aspirations, and working out what will be seen by them as an offer worth buying into. What you also do by understanding the context is work out who the opinion formers and power brokers are within their community, which then allows you to join the second step, which is joining the narrative. If you don't join the narrative and the conversation with an offer which is valid and seen as worthwhile, and you don't join it with the right people, then clearly you're not going to get off to a good start. So we spend a lot of time working out what the offer should be and who should be talking to communicate that. Then the third step is about shaping perceptions. And in Afghanistan, especially after what the people have been through over the last 30 years, clearly they hear you through their eyes. So you really do need to turn your rhetoric into reality. You need to have a checkpoint there to guarantee their security. You have to have a school there. You have to have a road there, or else there's no way you're going to any chance of shaping their perceptions. And what it's all about, ultimately, is effectively changing their behaviour so that they reject the malign influence of the insurgent and put their futures in the hands of their government, the government of Afghanistan. That's the force structure. I won't go through it in detail, but 6,500 men and women, predominantly from the UK. The red there are from 7 Armoured Brigade. The green was from 3 Commando Brigade. We had about 3,000 and 2,000 from 7 Armoured Brigade. A battle group from the Danes, an Estonian company, divided into 5 combined forces who had 5 individual areas of operation, and those are the 5 you see on the left-hand part of the slide. We then had a brigade advisory group, which was the advisors and mentors for the Afghan army, and we also had a police mentor and advisory group who did the same function for the police. And then we had brigade troops, which is effectively our find and strike force. More about that in a moment. Worked for an American 2-star general from the US Marine Corps, and he was Commander, Regional Command Southwest. And I worked directly to him on the NATO chain of command alongside my opposite number from Task Force Leatherneck, which was a US Marine. So those are the 2 main force elements out there. We worked alongside about 4,500 members of the Afghan National Army. That was 3 brigade from 215 Corps and about 3,000 Afghan National Police. The force structure you see up there will evolve over time. Our Prime Minister has set the troop ceiling at 9,500 until the end of next year, which is great, and I think that is absolutely sufficient to do the job that we've got to do. But it will evolve both in numbers and construct as we go past 2012 into 13, as we start to accelerate into transition and obviously ultimately into drawdown. This is the area of operation, Central Helmand area of operation, where we were in charge. It's about the size of Dorset, and it's got about 600,000 Afghan civilians inside it. It's about 50 kilometres north-south and about 50 kilometres to the east-west. What we, in support of the government of Afghanistan, are attempting to do by the end of 2014 is create a protected community which is looked after by the Afghan National Security Forces of approximately about 35% of the whole area of operation, which will probably have about 450,000 people in it. And that will be the protected core of the population of Central Helmand. And clearly the so what of that is that there will still be some people who will be sit outside that protected community. And so what of that is that the insurgency will probably need to go on unless there's some political settlement before that point. So, 2014 not only is not the end of the UK's commitment to Afghanistan, it clearly probably most likely won't be the end of the insurgency, and that will be a challenge that the Afghan National Security Forces will have to pick up. And the AO is divided into 3 districts, Lashkar, Nad-Ali and Garesh/Nari-Sharaj. And we were bounded to the north and south by Task Force Leatherneck, effectively 19,000 US Marines, north and south of us, keeping our flanks very tight. When we went out to Afghanistan, we characterized our time very much as being the scene between what happened before, which was Task Force Helmand led and using military parlance, sort of shape, clear, hold, build operations, to what was going to happen in the future, which was ANSF-led transition. And that's very much how it played out. Other aspects of the scene that we didn't realize when we went out there, but became apparent as we went through, is that we were on the scene between troop surge from a NATO/US perspective and troop drawdown. And already the American drawdown has started, and within RC Southwest, about 600 Marines will have returned home by November. So again, we've crossed that seam. We've also crossed the seam whereby, before I went out, our predecessors have very much been partnering the Afghan National Security Forces, shoulder to shoulder with them, doing business on a day-to-day perspective together. But during our time, that very much became a blocker to progress, because we needed to move to a point that we were actually mentoring and advising them, informally, if not formally, transitioning the responsibility for delivering security to them, because that was the forcing function for them to progress. And it got to a point where us standing beside them, helping them with the task, was actually slowing down their progress. So again, we crossed that seam. And we also crossed the seam whereby the Helmand Provincial Reconstruction Team was the main source of funding for governance and socio-economic development. And we crossed the seam whereby that shifted to what they call on-budget, delivered through the Afghan aligned ministries. And again, that was another area that created a degree of friction as we transitioned from what was a pretty spun-up Helmand Provincial Reconstruction process of delivering money and services to a nascent line ministry who was clearly building up its human capital and its experience of doing that. So we had to be aware of that and make sure that we helped them through that. But the key tipping point of crossing that seam was on the 20th of July, when we formally handed over lead security authority for Metropolitan Lashkar to the Afghan National Security Forces. Now you can see me shaking the hand with my opposite number, the Provincial Chief of Police, General Angar. And that was very much a day when, if you were there, you sensed the palpable desire, appetite, and energy of the Afghans to take back their sovereignty. And from then on, that was very much the underpinning context as we went forward. It engendered an appetite for them to, if not formally, but informally take over responsibility for their country, which again, I believe, accelerated progress and is a dynamic which we should encourage in the future as we go forward. So what did the seam look like as we crossed it? I think that in terms of security, we achieved our objective, which was maintaining momentum across that seam from a security perspective. And throughout the summer, we experienced a 45% cut in the level of violence out in Afghanistan from the previous summer, which is about 86 attacks a week less in the central Helmand AO, which we were responsible for. And in some areas, like Nad-Ali South, that was down to 86% less violence than the year before. So again, that was a tangible metric of how we actually had crossed the seam that I talked about. How did we achieve that? Well, it was very much about trying to get upstream of the threat and play the insurgent off the field as opposed to playing him on it. And how did we do that in sort of military practicality? Well, the first way we did it was very much suppressing the summer offensive, the insurgent summer offensive, as opposed to countering it. And we did that by unhinging his will and capability to actually try and seize the initiative by the tempo and simultaneity and unpredictable nature of our patrolling activity. Over 41,000 patrols, over 90 combined force level operations, and about 600 company level operations. And because of that tempo and simultaneity and the unpredictable nature which we did it, he was simply not able to get any traction in the summer campaign. He tried on the 19th of May with the Al-Badr offensive, which was 48 attacks in one day, but he wasn't able to sustain it. And he made the classic error of over-promising in terms of his ability to prosecute a campaign and under-delivering. And that massively underpicked his credibility with the people, which it was all about. We also focused a lot of effort on disrupting the core elements of the insurgent network, and the core elements being the command and control. We detained 19 low and mid-level commanders, and we killed 18. We also focused a lot of effort in interdicting his lethal aid facilitation routes into central Helmand. And one example of how we succeeded in that is we interdicted 7.5 tons of homemade explosive, which is about 8 months' worth of contact IEDs in central Helmand. And that, again, very much materially from a command and control or from a lethal aid perspective, limit his ability to prosecute his summer offensive. And the third thing that we did was we tried to dispel what we called the sort of summer fighting season psychosis, where everybody, whether you were an Afghan civilian in Nad Ali, a NATO general, or maybe a governor in one of the districts, everybody had a view that all you could do in the summer was fight. And we believed that wasn't the case. So we moved away and convinced people that fighting was not inevitable in the summer fighting season. And you've heard the figures, the degree to which we succeeded in that. But we were keen to push forward and make changes to our operational design during the summer, where traditionally we paused to make any changes until we got through the fighting season and worked out what progress we had and hadn't made. We were prepared to take operational design decisions during the fighting season based on our assumptions of how we were doing, as opposed to waiting until the end of it and then making the decision when you actually confirmed that you had been as successful as you thought. And we felt that was necessary, to keep the momentum going and particularly to create the space for governance to develop and come in and socio-economic development to come in. That if we held off for 4 or 5 months in the summer and held back on those areas, then again that was delaying the delivering of an offer, and it perpetuated this sense of, all we can do is fight, which is clearly not an attractive offer for the people. So we very much dispelled what we call the psychosis of the summer fighting season. What I'll do now is just go through the status of the campaign as we saw it as we left, in terms of the people, the insurgent, the governance and the development. The people, honourable people, war-weary, and had a complete hatred for the insurgent. But the only way that they could survive in central Helmand up until now is to remain invisible and avoid any expression of which side you were on, any avoidance of empathy for us, or being shown to side with the government of their country. So it was all about being invisible so that you didn't incur any rancor from either side. But what we did see towards the end of it, against that ability to suppress the summer offensive, the ability to accelerate governance and socio-economic delivery, we saw not all of the people, but large swathes of the people moving away from being fence-sitters to people who are actually supporting the government on a day-to-day basis. And what did that practically mean? Well, it practically mean literally slamming the compound door in the face of an insurgent as he was looking for sanctuary, having just attacked a Task Force Helmand patrol, or refusing him a bed-down location, or coming up and telling us where the insurgents had planted IEDs. 40% of the IEDs that we found during our 6 months were either pointed out or handed in by the people of Central Helmand. So I believe that they are off the fence increasingly, and they are increasingly putting their futures in the hands of their government. The insurgent then, fractured C2, demoralised, and a growing divide between the in-area local fighters and commanders and the out-of-area fighters and commanders, many of which are sitting across the border in Pakistan, because the environment is too non-permissive for them to be able to operate. And that's naturally causing distrust and confusion and uncertainty between those two groups, which I think is a very helpful sign. Also, the nature of their campaign is changing. They're moving very much more to being tactically defensive. And what do I mean by that? Well, they're not attacking us force on force. They're starting to try and disrupt the roads, the freedom of movement. They're trying to hang on to the people by an increasingly violent intimidation campaign. So they're in the defensive as opposed to the offensive tactically. But I think they are moving to the offensive in the strategic. And that's why you're seeing this shift towards spectacular attacks, close-quarter assassinations of Jarrah officials and military commanders, as they try and really continue tangible proof of their relevance as the campaign goes on. And the only way that they can do that is by being what I would term strategically offensive in terms of those close-quarter suicide IED attacks within the urban centres. And basically moving from this broad-based, rural-focused insurgency to a more narrow, cell-based, urban-focused campaign. And I think that's a trend that you will see coming on and continuing. The Afghan National Security Forces, and I purposely put them up together there. There's a member of the army on the left and the police on the right. Increasingly capable, and for the first time in Afghanistan during our tour, as I've already said, the police took over responsibility, day-to-day responsibility, which they delivered very effectively for security of Metropolitan Lashkar, and so did the army on the perimeters of Metropolitan Lashkar. So for the first time, they were running enduring independent ownership of parts of Central Helmand, which hadn't happened before. That was a big step forward. And that was managed very competent, very effectively by operational coordination centres, both at the provincial level in Lashkar and then ones down at the district level. Nad Ali, there was one in Lashkar doing the sort of district business, and there's one up in Goresh doing the district business for Nari-Shiraj. So again, they had a C2 network hubs, the golden thread, which allowed them to, on a day-to-day basis, command enduring independent operations in a way that they haven't. Still got some institutional issues in terms of education literacy, which slows down the rate of leadership development. They still have capabilities which need improvement, particularly counter-IED, medical, logistic, and communications. But all that can be delivered to a fit-for-purpose level by the end of 2014, I have no confidence. I have lots of confidence. Excuse me. Provincial governance. So this is a picture of Governor Mangal sitting with my opposite number, General Sharon Shah, commander of 3 Brigade 215 Corps, and General Angar, the Provincial Chief of Police. This was just after Operation Omid Haft, which was a clear and hold operation we did on the boundaries between Lashkar, Nad Ali and Nari-Shiraj in the first couple of months of our deployment out there. And really this just illustrates the governor sitting down with his principal security commanders, sitting down, working out the vision, having a clear idea of what they wanted to achieve, reaching out, because this was actually held right in the middle of where that operation was conducted, and then having the strength of character to issue robust guidance to their people. And also, as an aside, for the first time, really starting to get grips with corruption and narcotics. 37% reduction in narcotics production across Helmand in the last 3 years. We had district chiefs of police being sacked, with district governors being sacked in Goresh because of their corruption. So, you know, again, tangible signs of them trying to get to grip with those sort of existential problems that pervade society out in Afghanistan. So provincial level is strong. I don't believe it is just one brick thick anymore. You know, it's more about the appointment than the personality. You know, that said, clearly we have benefited from 3.5 years very strong governance by Mangal. And clearly he will go one day, and you know, we need somebody of equal ability to come in behind him if we're going to carry on maintaining the progress. But there's enough people in Afghanistan who are more than able of doing that. Down at the district level, this is a photograph of the district governor of Nad Ali, Habibullah Khan, sitting there with members of his district community council. You know, you can see the security members there, both from ISAF and from the NSF. He's sitting there with some of his principal members of that district community council. There's also a full establishment, tashkil, of line ministry representatives who deliver those services to the people of Nad Ali in a way that there wasn't before. There's also about 100 informal community shuras, which is down at the village Calais level, which links into this district community council, which, by the way, has 3 subcommittees, one looking at security, one looking at development, one looking at justice. So it's all in place, it's all attached to formal Gyroa governance outreach, and it's all working today. And that allows really lots of progress, getting right back to what this is all about in terms of delivering a better life, better socio-economic opportunity for the people of Central Helmand. I'll just give you an idea of the sort of developments during our time. 14 schools were opened. There's now 133 schools across Helmand. There was 47 in 2007. We saw another 8 clinics opening. There's now 58 across Helmand. 90% of the people of Helmand have access to health care. 2002, it was only 9% of the people. We opened up 10 bazaars, 300 shops within those 10 bazaars, and we blacktopped 47 kilometres of road, giving a total of about 300 kilometres, which has been blacktopped in the last 6 years. So from socio-economic, tangible proof, going back to what the Afghans want, is delivery today, not promises tomorrow, which is giving the people the confidence to reject the insurgency, side with Gyroa, and do what we want them to do, which is slam the door in the face of the insurgent. And let's just talk about our people, because none of this would have been achieved if it wasn't for our people, regardless of their rank, cap badge, or nation, because we had Danes and Estonians, and we had Gurkhas working with us. All of them playing their part in full, all of them delivering something which is really rather special, confidence in a safer world and UK security therein, and also hope for a brighter future in Helmand. And quite honestly, seeing these young men and women go through their daily business was humbling and inspirational, just as their efforts and achievements were unfailing. And simply, really, what made a difference was, their humanity to reach out to the people of Helmand in a way which gave these people of Helmand confidence to accept the offer. It's all about human relationship, ultimately. Their unyielding and wily soldiering, and also just a real insatiable desire to make a difference, made a difference out there. And we should all be very proud of each and every one of the 6,500 that were out there, indeed the 10,500 that are in the whole of the UK's commitment to that. And then finally, to conclude, I believe the campaign is on track. I do believe the end state, as directed of us moving out of a combat role by the end of 2014, will be timely in terms of handing the security responsibility over to the NSF. And during our time, I believe that we did see tangible proof of the government of Afghanistan delivering an offer which the people of Central Helmand are increasingly accepting and being connected to. Thank you very much.